Hello YouTube. Today's video is going to be on a line that a lot of people have requested. We're going to be taking a look at the Sicilian. Specifically, we're going to be taking a look at the Najdorf Sicilian after knight c3, a6. We're going to be taking a look at main line bishop g5, e6, f4, and we're going to be taking a look at the poison pawn variation beginning with the move queen b6. So if you like content like this and you want to see more of it, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and click on that notification icon. So anyways, the poison pawn variation. What's going on, what's black trying to do, and what are some of the topical lines that happen from here? Well, basically the poison pawn is just like it sounds. Black is threatening to take this pawn. And we typically call a pawn like this the poison pawn because, generally speaking, if you take a b pawn in the early opening, you fall so far behind in development that it just really can't possibly be worth capturing this pawn. White's going to have such a huge development lead, and you're going to spend most of your time capturing that pawn and then trying to get your queen back so that you don't lose your queen, that this must not be a good idea. This was a move, queen b6, that was championed by none other than Bobby Fischer. He was the one that came up with this idea, and it was something that really played to his strengths as a player. He was able to figure out how to take the pawn and do very good opening preparation and figure out how to get that queen back and get the rest of his pieces activated most of the time. Now, of course, today with the help of modern engines, I would say that for the most part, it shouldn't be that difficult for white to get a slight advantage, but also black's position does seem to be kind of holding up. I mean, black seems to be okay as well. But it's become easier and easier for white to achieve a slight advantage with kind of, I think, like maybe a minimal amount of preparation. So anyways, what should white do here? Well, for starters, if white declines, this is the easiest thing for black to counter. We would just play something like knight on b to d7, queen f3, and then you can simply shuffle your queen back, and you can play a main line up several tempi. You're actually up several tempi on the old main line because the knight has retreated, and you haven't had to waste a tempo on bishop to e7, and because of that, you don't have to worry about any sacrificial attacks, anything crazy. Black is just completely equalized at this point, and black is doing fine. Probably even slight edge black, in my opinion. I think black has gained 2 tempos on the main line, and that can't be anything but good for him. So that's if they decline. And this actually got popular for a little while. People were declining. But okay, so let's go back to queen d2, and then we're going to play queen takes b2. Now, there's 2 moves here that you need to be familiar with. There is the move rook b1, which I think in terms of preparation is a little bit easier to prepare for, although there is a forced draw in this line. White can force a draw if he wants it, and there's not really a whole lot black can do to stop it. But in general, if white wants to force a draw with the white pieces, it's difficult for black to stop it, like regardless of the opening. It's very hard to stop white from getting a draw if he really, really wants one. So there's rook b1, and then of course the other move here is knight b3. And knight b3 is a much more aggressive attempt. In my mind, it's a much more dangerous move. You have to prepare against knight b3 a lot more carefully, and it has a lot of these immediate threats of basically trapping the queen and things like that. So anyway, so let's take a look at rook b1 first. This is, like I said, the simpler of the 2. We're going to have queen a3. We're going to have pawn to f5. This is the main thing. White has to use his development lead to kind of try to smash black's position very quickly and mess up black's pawns. So this is what black's trying to do. Black is trying to develop as much as possible with tempo. That's why knight c6. That's why bishop e7. That's why castles. We're just trying to get our pieces developed kind of as much as possible. And we would like to get our queen out of the line of fire, but we have to catch up in our development first so that we don't get smashed in the middle of the board. But right here, after castles, there is this possibility of rook b3. Now, of course, white can continue to play just play chess. White can play king h1 if he wants to, but there is this possibility of rook b3, and then queen c5, and then bishop to e3, and if white wants it, white can just force a draw. And this actually happened in the World Championship match between Garry Kasparov and Nigel Short. Nigel Short actually forced a draw with the white pieces, mainly because he had just lost a game and he was trying to get back into the mindset of the match. So a lot of old school thinking is if you had just lost a game, the thing you have to do is in the very next game you need to get a draw, and then you're ready to play on equal terms with your opponent again to regain that psychological balance. So it is very easy to force a draw in the poison pawn. Now, if white chooses to avoid the draw, really the spot to do it is going to be right around here. E5 is a very reasonable attempt to play for an advantage with white. These positions should be slight edge white. After e5, d takes e5, the big difficulty that you're going to have with the black pieces is just activating the rest of your camp. And it is kind of an ongoing issue. So you have to have some very specific preparation. And this is something that's just true within the poison pawn itself. You really need to have specific preparation with black when you play the poison pawn. And you need to know exactly what your plan is to activate your pieces. It's one of these openings where you can take your opening principles for the most part and throw them out the window. You just need to know your theory, and you need to get the exact moves and the exact move order correct. Otherwise, you're going to end up in a position that's lost very, very easily with the black pieces. You have a couple of extra pawns here, but these problems are actually harder to play with than white's problems. Like, white's position is very easy to play. You could give me white's position, I could pick it up and play, almost without knowing any theory. But black's position is definitely going to require theoretical preparation because you have to do some very, very careful maneuvering to get all your pieces developed. So just to show you exactly how you would go about the process of trying to do that with black, you would have to play very specifically against this g6 move. Knight e4, you would have to castle here. Castles. And then the natural move almost looks like gh5 to me, but apparently that move loses. So you have to play queen e7. And then if at this point bishop f3, equalizing is actually pretty easy. You would go like queen a7, king h1, bishop e7, queen c3, rook b8, h3, rook takes, queen c7, and black has already equalized without much of a fight. So if we go back, really the correct thing to do here is to play something like rook f6, and then knight f6, queen f6, and then play something like bishop g4. And this should be slight advantage white. There was actually a game that continued queen d6 here, and black played incorrectly with the move queen f7, but black could have actually equalized very easily with the move rook a7. And like I said, this is why you have to really have specific preparation. Rook a7 is by no means the world's most natural move in this position, but this is what you have to do to kind of equalize your position and finish your activation. So the idea is after queen b8, you would play rook f7, queen c8, and you did a really great job getting rid of that bishop on c8 without ever having to move it. It was a terrible piece. And then something like this, and actually this. So again, very specific preparation. At no point did you ever actually take on h5. So we're already on move 25. And this is something that I would say should probably be in your prep. You should have this line in your prep if you're playing the black pieces, because you really do need to know how to equalize under these conditions. And then rook e1, gh5 is apparently completely equal according to the engine, and black is out of the woods. So if we go back, this is one of the harder lines that you're going to face from white, is this early e5 push within the rook b1 line. But by far and away, I think, in terms of preparing with the black pieces, a more difficult line to face is this knight b3 line. So against knight b3, we do need to play the immediate queen a3, and then we're going to have bishop f6, gf6, we're going to have bishop e2, we're going to have h5. These are all the main theoretical moves. And actually, right now, we're following a world championship game between Boris Spassky and Bobby Fischer. And this is a really critical game for the theory of this line, because Fischer actually ended up losing this game with the black pieces. And he made a really critical mistake that you have to learn from and you have to correct for. So after castles, we're going to have knight to c6. We're going to have king h1. We're going to have bishop d7. And then we're going to have a big decision point here. There's actually a couple different moves here for white. White has tried queen e3. White has tried knight d1. But of course, in this world championship match, Spassky played the move knight to b1. And this actually cost Fischer quite a few problems. He didn't really know how to respond to it properly. He played the correct move to begin with. He played queen b4. This is all well and good. Queen e3. And then he made the error in this position. He played the move pawn to d5. Now, in Fischer's defense, he of course found the right move, just sort of the wrong move order. The move pawn to d5 is certainly the right kind of idea in this position. You want to retreat. You want to create some type of retreat for this queen. The queen is getting close to running out of oxygen here, and that is a big deal. But what happened in the game is Fischer's position just started getting more and more awkward after e takes d5, knight e7, and then c4. And then this queen just got all kinds of uncomfortable. The center of the board is getting all kinds of uncomfortable. And it gets all kinds of uncomfortable for Fischer to try to finish his development. And he eventually just ends up with a logjam that even he couldn't fix. So the game continued knight f5. We had queen d3, which was a very excellent move. We have pawn to h4. Makes total sense, setting up the shot knight g3. Bishop g4, knight d6, knight d2. Pawn to f5, which turned out to be possibly a fatal error because of the move pawn to a3. And now the queen just officially just kind of runs out of oxygen. We play queen b6. We have pawn to c5, and Fischer, he just kind of gave up the ghost here. He just played queen b5, queen c3, and then he took on g4, but then after a4 his queen was completely trapped. So he didn't really have a good place to put his queen now, and so I guess we could call it a sacrifice. I mean, I'm fairly certain that he saw it, so he just continued trying to do something and drum up some play, but the position just ended up being completely hopeless, and he had to resign. Now, where should we correct? Like, where should we fix kind of the line that Fischer went down here? Where exactly did Fischer go wrong? Well, the main culprit can be looked at from d5. But it's not totally the wrong idea. What we should really play here is the move knight e7. And the move knight e7 is actually really good. It's got basically the same idea. We still want to play the move pawn to d5, but we want to do it from a different move order. So here, if they play the move pawn to c4, we would switch gears and play f5. And this is the point, is if we know that they're going to play c4, then we don't want d5, we want f5 instead. If they play something else, then d5 is back on the table. So after something like f5, a3, we would have queen a4, say knight c3, queen c6, knight d4, queen c5, and we're actually following an Anatoly Karpov game. It continued e takes f5, bishop g7, fe6, fe6, rook a d1, bishop takes d4, queen d4, queen d4, rook d4, knight f5, rook d2, rook c8, rook f3, king e7. Was actually major advantage black, and Karpov went on to win. And that was in Jingwang versus Karpov in Hanover in 1983. So, of course, we can go back, and c4, f5 seems to be an okay line for black, so white should probably play the move a3 instead. This should just lead to slight edge white, and there's not a whole lot black can do about it. After queen a4, we're going to have knight c3, queen to c6, and then rook a d1. Should be slight advantage black, but of course there's still a lot of play here for both sides, and you know, this is something that just is going to require a lot of preparation from here on out to try to make sure that you can get your pieces activated and you can get your pieces into the game for the rest of the game. Now, there are a few other ways that people can play this position, mainly knight d1, and this move leads to some pretty wild complications. The main move here is rook c8, but I would say like an easier move from a theoretical perspective would even just be something like queen b4. I just think it's easier from just a preparation perspective and just from something that you have to memorize. Because after queen b4, there's basically just one line. There's like queen e3, and then simply knight e7, a3, queen a4, f5, and then e5 is relatively close to equal for black. So I would just say go with this. It's one less line that you have to memorize. But if you want to go into the deep theory of playing rook c8, go ahead and go for it. These lines are very, very complex, and there's a lot of different twists and turns. The absolute kind of main line right now is just knight e3, and then it's basically kind of the same idea. We play queen b4, we've got to evacuate with that queen, and then we have c3, and then queen takes e4 is following another Nigel Short versus Garry Kasparov game. In this case, Garry Kasparov actually won. And that game continued bishop d3, queen a4, knight to c4, and we had rook c7, knight b6, queen a3, rook ae1, which turned out to be the fatal heir, and then we had this move knight e7, which is already advantage Kasparov, apparently. And, of course, the idea behind knight e7 was as soon as white's knight retreated to c4, Garry intended to snap that knight off, and then he had an advantage over here on the king side with h4. The main idea being to eventually attack these light squares with h3 in conjunction with the rest of his pieces. And then after queen c6, Nigel Short resigned, and that was Nigel Short versus Garry Kasparov, played in London back in 1993. So that's just one example of how that line can go. There's a million different side steps that white can take. There's not that many different side steps that black can take. White kind of dictates the nature of the opening and kind of the direction that the opening is going to go. And that's what makes it so difficult to actually prepare the poison pawn variation, because you have to be prepared for all kinds of different tries from white. But these are all the main tries that you're going to face, and these are all the main lines kind of as of today. Well, anyways, I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you learned something new about chess, and I hope you can use these ideas in your own games. Thank you very much for watching.